I thought we'd, rather than try to condense a 7-hour working at heights class down into half an hour, that would be stupid. I'll just try and hit some high spots in the presentation that we do. Right now, our task is trying to comply with what the Ministry of Labour has brought down on all of us, and that is that anybody that works above 3 meters at any point in time, or works beside a trench that's 2.4 meters deep, or if you got a wheelbarrow on your site and that trench is 1.2 meters deep, you got to have a working at heights ticket in your pocket. So a real challenge for all of us in construction and the industries. I didn't get a cool intro, but Scott told me to introduce myself. So how come I'm here? Well, last fall I decided I'd had enough of what I was doing for now. I came to last fall with 2 trade tickets in my pocket. I'm a power lineman, so I've worked with hydro and stuff. I'm also an electrician. But don't run the math on this, because you'll find out just how old I actually am. But for a lot of years, actually 32 years, I've been working for this little group called the Salvation Army. And so don't hold it against me. My first 20 years as a pastor, I'm not going to do confessional today, by the way. Some guy in one of my classes talked about that, and I said, no. But for the last 12 years with that group, I was in their social service department teaching adults. I was in Barton Street Jail for 8 years teaching anger management and parenting and stuff, and then the last 4 or 5 years running the Army's Suicide Prevention Center in Hamilton. So a really interesting journey to getting hired by Worksite Safety to teach working at heights. And it's probably the trade tickets in my pocket, but some of the adult stuff. So we've been teaching people from every different angle of the industry. And so I hope that your questions afterwards kind of might come from your side of the industry, because I learn something every time we get into a class and somebody's asking me this weird question about how I would protect myself from falling from. The toughest one lately has been the top of a 100-foot silo on my farm. You know, really challenging stuff we've got, right? So what I thought I'd do is a real quick demo of how the equipment works, starting with a bit of an inspection. Now if you're really bored with what's going on, we threw some pages down on your table there. You can check that, or check your cell phone or whatever you got to do. But what I thought I'd do is we'll have a few. We'll do this kind of like you're on Southwest Air, right? And you know that demo that they do before you get off the ground, and usually you sleep through it, unless it's Southwest Air. Like, those things are the most entertaining part of the whole flight. They go into some, a bit of comedy. One of the best ones was the lady who said, "We know that you have lots and lots of choices when it comes to choosing your air travel, and we know you're all cheap. So thanks for choosing Southwest." So what I'm going to ask for is some volunteers, and we'll just kind of spread out around here, and we'll do a quick harness inspection. We'll put it on. We'll do a lanyard. So I've got enough. I got enough for 1, 2, 3, 4 volunteers. No, don't everybody step up at the same time. Like, I've only got 4. Come on, 4 people that would just love to put on. Probably people who've not put one of these on. I'm not going to give you that one. That's just not kind. That's a good one. So I've got 1 volunteer. I'm not an auctioneer, really. So don't make me work for this. There we go. There's a nice one. And why don't we go for the 3rd one? Why don't we have my boss put the 3rd one on? How about that? There you go. Good. We won't use this one, and I'll tell you why for a second. This is a ladder harness. It's a real trick to get on, but the difference between this ladder harness, and others, is got a sternal D-ring, so it kind of an attachment point here on the front, as well as your attachment point on the back. So what I'm going to get you guys to do is just maybe move out into the crowd just a little bit, but don't lose your visual of me, okay? Because we're going to do a harness inspection, kind of like Southwest Air. It'll be cool. No, really, it'll be cool. Nobody's going to get hurt. Well, until I take them out and hang them off the tower out in the parking lot, then somebody could get hurt, but no, they won't. So, harness inspection. Always like to start with the arresting ring on the back of the harness. That's the one that's going to take the biggest hit if I'm in a fall. So what we're looking for is cracks or breaks or anything that might cause that thing to be out of shape. That's the kind of stuff we're looking for. So my able-bodied assistants are checking that arresting ring. The other thing is whenever I see metal touching lanyard, metal touching nylon, I want to try and get a look underneath there to make sure that there's nothing going on underneath there that I can't see really easily. So the other piece, the next thing that's attached to that arresting ring is a ring keeper. It keeps that thing in place from rattling down my back. Problem with many of us is that our anchor points aren't up above our heads. They're down on a deck of an aerial work platform, or they're on the roof, or somewhere like that. Gravity will take this thing down my back after the day goes on. I want to make sure that thing is not broken, so I'll twist it back and forth. Here in the 72 degrees Fahrenheit room, it's really pliable, but take this thing up north to -40. Take it out to Alberta and just crack it on the side of the truck. And it will chip, it will break. So we want to make sure that that's in place. Now the next thing we want to do is check the back of the harness. What I'm primarily looking for next are these fall arrest indicators. Looks like a little S fold in the harness itself. Some of the Norgard type harnesses, this is a Miller, have a little tab there. That is a single stitch across the back of that harness that will pop if it's in a significant fall. If that's popped, the harness comes out of service. So coming on down the back of the harness, I'm looking at for anything that looks like it might be damaged or stained. If some young fellow has decided that he wanted to write his name on this harness right here on the back strap, that takes the harness out of service. We can't write on the harness with anything. If I got to write my name on it, I got to find a label or somewhere to write that on. So coming on down the back of the harness, I'm just looking for anything that might look like damage, especially checking these little things called stitch patches. That's a stitch patch right there, and I'm going to see the end of stitches. That's okay, but I want to make sure there's no stitches broken. We can't have broken stitches in there. Coming on down the back of the harness, I'm going to get to the leg straps. Mostly I want to make sure that there's nothing that's out of shape or stained or cut. This webbing is designed to fray if it gets a nick in it, so I'm just going to check that. Any place where the buckle passes through a grommet, I want to check on that, make sure it's not damaged in any way. I've got the back of the harness checked, so now I'm going to come back up to that A-ring, going to give it a shake. Those of us who do this all the time are often just giving the thing a shake. What are we doing? Well, the biggest thing about this is that it's a lot of straps to get tangled up. So we're just going to make sure that nothing's tangled. So by shaking it, oftentimes we can shake the tangles out of it. Now I'm going to come down the front of the harness and make sure there's nothing damaged in any way there. At some point, I'm going to come to some name tag labels. Some of them are underneath a Velcro patch. Some of them are underneath the front chest strap. Just going to make sure that those patches are all there. You're looking for a CSA 259 tag to make sure that it's CSA approved. All of these have to be CSA approved to be on a Canadian job site. Coming on down, again, just making sure there's no damage of any kind. This one's got a couple extra rings because it's a positioning harness. So there we go, harness inspection. So now putting it on. You kind of get it on like your raincoat. The worst part of this is getting it tangled up when you get it when you're putting it over your head. So to get it on, we're just kind of making sure it doesn't tangle up on the way over. So my classroom demo people are gonna just slip that thing on, get it over top of your shoulders. Attempt to not tangle it up. Looks like you've all done this before. That's great. And then get the front chest strap done up as soon as you can. That's going to keep it from falling off your person while you're getting it together there. So the next thing on this one here, because it's got a positioning strap in the middle, I'll do that one up next. This is more your kind of your lineman application. So. Bit of this hardware off here. Sorry about that. Yep. looks good? Yeah, it looks like you're doing really well. Nice. Next piece is the leg straps. So we'll get that, just reach down and grab those leg straps. Now, here's where we want to have a little talk, fellas. About fellas. Let's see. So primarily, we want to make sure these leg straps are nice and tight. I'll tell you just about how tight in a second. But you also want to make sure that as those leg straps come down through your legs and up the front, there's no folds in them. You want to make sure there's no fold in the leg straps. So you all being entertained by my demo crew? They're doing really well, aren't they? Yes, indeed. Now, we're not going to worry too much about fine-tune adjustments here, but looks like you've done real well. So the deal with the leg straps, we've put an article on your tables there about orthostatic incompetence or intolerance, suspension trauma, and I'll talk about that in a minute. Some of the traumatic experiences in falling, I mean, what happens when you fall into a harness is basically you're putting your body through a whole bunch of stuff that it's really not designed to do. But if you want to go on YouTube, there's a really entertaining British demonstration which starts with a disclaimer that talks about, you will see some images in this presentation that you're not going to like, kind of thing. And it's about what happens if you don't install these leg straps properly, fellows. You want to make sure that everything you own is safely down in between there. I'd like to let the ladies off the hook, but if you're wearing one, make sure that it's above here, not below here. Because what happens when I fall is that everything moves up 1 foot. We allow 1 foot of harness stretch, and it's harness movement. So as my friend here was talking about getting hit in the back of the head with a door, you'll notice that A-ring on my back is hopefully between my shoulder blades. We want it to be down low enough that when I fall into this and land in a lanyard and everything moves up a foot, that arresting ring isn't going to catch me in the back of the head. It wants to just kind of end up somewhere around here. The harness is designed to redistribute force. The falling force of a 185-pound worker in a 20-foot fall. The arresting force at the end of that fall is just about the same force as being hit by a small pickup truck. Just about 4,000 pounds of force that we hit the end of that fall with. So what happens with the harness is that it redistributes all of that force from that A-ring and down here into the subpelvic area, the strongest bones in my body, which stops me in the fall. The harness is also designed to keep me upright if I'm unconscious. So that A-ring on the back is designed so that if I'm in a fall, and even if I'm unconscious, I'm upright. The problem, though, is that when all of this stuff tightens up, it can completely restrict the blood flow from the bottom of the bus to the top of the bus, where it gets oxygen and things like that. And we've put some stats on your table there, but in about 3 minutes in a fall, you're going to begin to feel dizzy. In about 5 minutes, for sure, you're going to begin to feel dizzy if you're conscious. What happens, though, if we're not able to relieve some of this pressure and get the blood circulating again, it becomes toxic really quickly. And so I'll do a little quick thing about suspension relief straps in a minute. But that's the problem in a fall. While this protects me, hopefully, from hitting the surface below me, it does have some hazards attached in that it cuts the blood circulation off from the bottom to the top. Can't get oxygen again. So there we've done a little bit of a harness thing. So what I want to do now is talk about lanyards, and I'll hand a couple of these out to my co-partners here. So how about if we, there we go. There we go. So if you're close enough to see one of these, as my guys kind of travel around the room there, what you're going to notice about these is that they've got a snap hook on them, obviously. Snap hooks are all designed, they're all CSA approved, typically designed for 3,500 pounds of stress. But to test this thing, to check it, we in the classroom, we go through a real quick check. Obviously, you're going to give it a visual check. You're going to give it a test to make sure it operates properly. So in its normal position, you want to make sure the gate won't open. You want to depress the safety, make sure the gate will open. That's the basic test. With the gate open, most of the new ones have got an extra little hook that marries up into the gate. You can see that little hook there. In a high fall, that is, if this gets kicked off a high surface and ends up landing on the sidewalk, sidebar, if you see one of those coming at you, move. Like it's kind of like medieval times when this thing comes off the high steel and it's dropping. If that thing gets a hold of you, you can almost picture what it's a really dangerous piece of equipment when it falls accidentally off of a surface. When that hits the ground or the sidewalk, oftentimes there's two things that'll happen. This little hook will break off. If it's gone, obviously it comes out of service. The other thing, and the guys in the classroom that do this all the time, they kind of laugh at me, but it's a sound test, and I don't know any other way to do it, but we've always done this. If I depress that safety and I'm hearing crunch and munch in there or anything that doesn't sound quite right, there's a little tiny coil spring, almost like a little heavier than your pen, but it's a little coil spring in there. When that hits the sidewalk in a fall, that's one of the things that's going to pop or break. And if you hear it crunching and munching in there, get that thing out of service because it will let go and the safety will be deactivated. Next part of the test is we're going to flip the hook to the one side and check underneath the fold there. Make sure there's no break or damage there. We'll flip it the other way, do the same thing. And then again, we're looking at stitch patches here. These things are stitched. We're looking for any breaks in the stitches, and then coming down looking for burns or breaks or pulls. When this nylon stuff gets pulled, it heats up. So we're going to see something that might just look like a bit of a burn. It might actually be a stretch that's happened in it. All of them are going to have labels. If the labels are gone, the thing's got to come out of service. And obviously, that's a tough label to keep on it, right? We'll come to another hook, do the same kind of an inspection on the hook, make sure it'll operate, give it the listen test, make sure the hook's still there, and there we've got a lanyard that's ready to go into service. So this lanyard is a double leg lanyard. It's a Class B, no shock absorber. I've got a shock absorbing lanyard here. That's a Class E4, good for people from 100 to 253 pounds. We've got an E6, it's actually over there. E6 is good for those people who are a little heavier, up to 385 pounds. So shock absorbing lanyards. Let's just talk about a shock absorber for a moment. If you're wearing a shock absorber, we want it on our back, not up on the structure. Shock absorbers are set to deploy at between 440 and 460 pounds of force. If you're 100 pounds, you come off of an edge and you fall 6 feet, you will generate 440 pounds of force. The shock absorber will deploy. It's designed to go off. It's designed to absorb some of that final end shock of a fall. The science is the same science that put men on the moon, I suppose, or land 747s. The bigger the plane, the bigger the worker, the more shock absorbing they're going to need. This is an E6 over here. When this one lets go, it drops you an additional 3.5 feet. When that one lets go for the larger worker, it drops you an additional 6 feet, 5.7. So we need to take that into account when we're calculating fall distance. So if I'm going to wear these and I'm calculating, well, how much clearance do I need to actually put this on my person, we have to take that shock absorbing into account. That when I fall, I'm going to have an extra 3.5 feet of fall. So there we've done a harness inspection, a harness install, a lanyard inspection. Let me just do a real quick thing on rope grabs. Well, you know what, let's do this self-retractor. I'm having a lot of guys come to the class who have done a lot of work up. I'm sorry, yes?
You want to mention how tight to put the leg straps on?
Correct. How tight to put the leg straps on. Good, thanks for stopping me. I'm kind of on fast forward here because, yeah. Yeah. So how tight? I should be able to get my hands in here. I should not be able to turn them out. Some people like to use the two-finger method. I've never found that works really well. It's not enough of a test. I should be able to get them in. I shouldn't be able to turn them out. That's tight enough. And what you'll find is during the day, especially if you're wearing this green harness here, it's got a bit of stretch in it. Miller's given us one harness that's got just a little bit of stretch, really comfortable, but you might find halfway through the day you've got to just do a little readjustment as things happen, as your clothing kind of compacts. Good point. And the other thing is, you've got to take into account your winter clothing or your summer clothing. All those things might require a harness adjustment. Yeah.
Sorry, I've seen people don them by putting legs in first.
Mm-hmm.
That's a no-no?
I don't. I've never have, only because of what I just said. I might have adjusted it for what I was wearing yesterday, and today it might be warm, and I might just neglect to readjust them. I like to put it on, adjust the legs, do my check, and make sure that it's good for today and for the equipment or the clothing that I'm wearing today. We got to always think about other stuff, and we talk about this in the class a lot. What are the other hazards? It might not just be a fall hazard. I might be working over top of water today, so I got fall arrest equipment, I got life-preserving equipment, I might have a respirator on, all things that would adjust how tight this thing needs to be. It always needs to be that tight, so I might have to adjust it differently. Good points. Self-retracting lanyards. As an old burnt-out lineman, I hope you see more and more and more of these. This basically turns every fall into a travel restraint. It stops me really quickly. In fall protection, we have a bit of a hierarchy. The first choice I should try to always take is travel restraint. In the industry, we call it a dog leash, right? It's a lanyard and a harness to an anchor point, but it stops me before I get to that unprotected edge. Travel restraint. As a lineman or a tower worker, we use fall restrict. Restricts my fall to 2 feet, 1.96 feet actually, or less. Usually using these rings to something here, a pole grab or a tower grab. If I was to fall, or even on a ladder, if I was to fall, it stops me in 2 feet. So that's my second choice. My third choice is fall arrest, which is one of these lanyards, which could allow for, after you've fallen and the 6 feet of lanyard's been taken up and the 1 foot of harness stretch has gone into play, and then the shock absorber has gone off, 18.5 feet if you're running those numbers, 18.5 feet of fall, a long distance to fall. If I was wearing one of these though, and I came off the edge, my fall is limited to about that much. So as soon as this gets going fast enough, it just grabs. So turns every fall into a very short fall. Called a self-retracting lanyard. This one's got 2 feet of, 2 meters of lanyard wrapped up inside of it. And what I've heard from the workers who have gone up to the Suncor site or in Alberta, if you show up with one of these things, they'll say, "Thanks for bringing that here." It's just, this is so much safer. We're using these on aerial work platforms now a lot, with the box laying down on the deck, and it's attached to me on a D-ring. And again, if the machine is moving and I get ejected, it stops me from going out over an edge. A really nice piece of equipment, certainly more expensive than these, $170, $200 for one of these guys, certainly under $100 for a lanyard. So that's that. Now my display team here, because we're keeping an eye on the time clock, if you guys could come on over here, we're going to do a quick demonstration on how a rope grab works. So if you want to just toss your lanyard right there on the floor. So we've got a lifeline here. Roofers use it all the time. Swing stage workers use it all the time. But what I want to do is just a quick demo on how this thing works. So, and then we're going to do a quick demo on what we call 100% tie-off. So, if we could make you an anchor point. If I was a roofer, If I was a, no, I won't go into the, no. That's just wrong. All right, rope grab. So if I was a roofer, and this was my anchor point on a roof, and this was the lifeline that was going down the roof, and my role as the roofer was to make sure I don't go over that unprotected edge, here's how I might do that. I'd use something like this, which is called a vertical rope grab. Most important part of a vertical rope grab is to keep it vertical. If you get it upside down, it's gonna absolutely fail. So I would maybe take this, I'd attach this to the lifeline, the anchor point's up there on the peak of the roof. There we go, my rope grab is on. Now I'm going to get Mike here to be my worker. I'm going to attach this to Mike and this to the rope grab. So Mike, what we have to do is make sure that you can't get over that edge, which is the edge of that carpet. So if you want to just walk slowly over there, I'm going to adjust your rope grab for you to make sure that you can't do that. Well, that's not a bad adjustment right there. Look at there. So if Mike was trying to protect himself such that he's not going to go over the edge of that roof, this is exactly the system that he might use. Roofers use it all the time. If his work took him over that way, it changes the perpendicular attachment. The problem is that if Mike, you were to go over that way for me, and now we've got to get Mike to that edge, so let's give him a little bit of slack. Let's give him a little bit of slack. There, he can get to the edge now. The problem is, if I don't keep this anchor point directly behind me, and I move farther over, what I've done is given myself enough rope to go over the edge here. So I have to be careful about anchor points to make sure that they're always perpendicular to me, always directly behind me. So on a roof, I might need to have 4 or 5 different anchor points to make sure that as I'm moving around the edge of the roof, if I'm using this for travel restraint, that I'm never going to be able to come off, lose my balance there, and go off the roof over here. So just important to make sure I know where my anchor points are. If Mike was climbing a ladder, come on back over here, Mike, we'll get you on a ladder. So I'll take this from you, Bruno, and I'll hold it up tight here. So if Mike was climbing a ladder, we would probably like to put a different harness on him. We might put one with a sternal D-ring, and this would be up on the roof, and this might be real close to him. If you're ever inside those, and you should try to get inside of one, well, security will get you first, but inside of one of those whirlybird transformer towers, phenomenal place to be inside, an amazing little piece of equipment, huge piece of equipment. Inside there's a ladder going up the center. It's a fixed access ladder, and there's a rope grab type system which connects from here, a frontal D-ring, with a carabiner, and as you climb the ladder, the system follows you up. As you climb down the ladder, the system follows you down. If you were to fall, it would stop you in 2 feet or less, a fall restrict system. That's how we might use it there. If we were on a swing stage, our anchor point will be coming down the side of the building. As the swing stage goes up, my partner Mike would move his rope grab up, just to let that travel. And then once the swing stage was static and in its place, we'd tighten up, take some slack out of it to make sure I didn't have enough slack to get out over the edge based on the length of my lanyard. So that's kind of how a rope grab works. The last thing that we want to talk about here is what we call maintaining 100% tie-off. Now, one of the exercises that we have to do in the classroom is this thing called maintaining 100% tie-off. So I'll get you to slip that on my back there if you would, Ryan. So this is one of the exercises the Ministry of Labor has us go through with learners as they're in our classes learning about how to climb. So I'll get you guys to spread out just a little bit. So yeah, that's great. So we have learners. Imagine that they're coming up an elevator in a new construction situation. So up they come out of the elevator, and they attach to their first anchor point. Had a guy in the class who was a mountain climber talk to me about. He gave me a term. It's Lanyard Management. The deal here is I want to make sure that I'm not going to get tangled up in this safety equipment, which can trip me if it's in the wrong place and I was to experience a fall. So if I'm trying to, this would not be good. If I was to come off of an edge and fall, and this is up around here, it's going to kill me. It's going to take my head off, really. So what do I make sure is I'm never tangled up in it, but that I'm always tied off. So if I was on the 25th floor and this was air all around me, I've come up out of the elevator, here's the exercise we do with the guys. We make sure that they're always 100% tied off. So I go to anchor point 2, back to anchor point 1. My work to be done is over here. I tie off to 3. I come back to 1 or to 2, and then I can do my work here. So although we'd like to send them up to the top of the roof and have them rappel off the side of it, that's one of the exercises that we actually have to complete in the course to have guys understand that as I'm on a height, that I have to maintain 100% tie-off. I have to stay tied off at all times. A simple little exercise that we attempt to complete in the class. Now, last but not least, let's talk a little bit, I should take that off my back. Let's talk a little bit about suspension trauma. If you guys don't mind hanging out here, you make a really good visual, better than just me. So, suspension trauma straps. So what we're talking about when we talk about suspension trauma, so what happens, we talked about the fact that we fall into the harness, all of the blood's restricted from the top to the bottom, it becomes toxic. In 3 or 4 or 5 minutes, it becomes toxic. Fat cells, all the stuff that normally happens in our body as our blood circulates, all the cleansing stuff isn't happening down here. And we end up with this problem. And it's an automatic problem. You'll read this little article on the table. It's an automatic problem. There's not much you can do about it, except give yourself a little bit of relief with these straps. Your body is designed that if it's not getting the proper amount of oxygen up into your brain, it's designed to put you out, cause you to be unconscious. What your body is doing is saying, fall down, fall down. You're designed, so if you were just standing there and all the circulation was cut off and you fell down, the blood would begin to circulate again and everything would be fine. So your brain says, unconscious, make this person fall down. Problem, you're in a harness. You're dangling on the edge of a building. And so you can't fall down, but you will still go unconscious. And that's where really bad things start to happen. So very quickly, what you need to be doing is if you're climbing a lot, you want to have these things. They're called, I won't actually install them, I'll just kind of demonstrate how they go. They're installed right here where the leg strap meets the uppers. And they're a pass-through system. You pass the package through itself and it's installed right here, and you would wear these on your harness. If you were in a fall, you would open up the little package over here which exposes a little tiny D-ring, little small D-ring, and it's over here. You'd open up this package over here which is going to drop a strap out, like so. Okay, so now you're hanging in midair, not a fun day, you're going to reach across here, you're going to grab the little hook and snap it into this D-ring here. So now what you've got is a strap that you can actually get the heels of your boots in, and ooh, that seems a little too long. So I'm going to reach down, give it a little shorten, and now what I've got is a system that will actually allow me to relieve some of that pressure here at the leg straps, allowing a little bit of circulation to take place, but also allowing these leg pumps, the biggest muscles in your body, which when you're walking around do the work of pumping blood back up to your vital organs, but you're actually exercising them a little bit. So what you're going to do is lift yourself out of that, give yourself a little bit of relief until you feel things starting to circulate again. The dizziness maybe goes away. You're not going to want to try and balance there, and you'll probably relax back into the straps. Ministry of Labor says when we're doing our safe work plans, when we're doing our rescue plans, which have to be in place if I'm using a fall arrest system or a safety net, we have to set up a plan that gets somebody back to safety within 15 minutes. 7, if you're hanging, you want to be back up in more than 15 minutes, or sooner than 15 minutes. 7 is much better, but 15 minutes is what the Ministry of Labor has deemed appropriate for a rescue. So, suspension relief straps. a couple of different kinds. That's one kind. We've got another kind here. You can come up and deploy that if you like. $25, $30, I think, is what they're worth at the supply store. What haven't I talked about?
One question on that. A few years ago, trainers were suggesting that if you didn't have those, you try to move the back strap around to sit in the harness rather than hang straight. Is that not practical?
We're not teaching that anymore, only because any movement of the harness could cause it to fail, right? If it's not, yeah, so we're not teaching that anymore. If the harness is on properly, you should be sitting in a butt strap. The only thing that we might allow to teach is try to move your legs. Try to keep some movement, because like what I was saying, these big muscles here in your femoral area are pumps. This is a one-way pump. These will pump the blood back up if you can move a little bit. We don't recommend moving the harness around once you've fallen into it. Yeah. Yes, sir.
So you said about travel restraint versus fall rest.
Yep.
And the Ministry of Labor requires part of the rescue plan within 15 minutes in a fall arrest
Correct.
situation.
Yep.
If you're in a scissor lift
Yep.
with a
Self-retractor.
self-retract,
Mhm.
that is travel restraint.
Yep.
So, how do you reconcile that? Because a worker might go over the railing of the scissor lift.
Yep.
In travel restraint, he only falls 2 feet.
Yep.
Do you recommend? I mean, I'm not.
No. So the minister.
Kind of
Yeah.
funky in those low heights.
It is. It's tricky in low heights. Ministry of Labor the Ministry of Labor doesn't require us to have a rescue plan if we're not using fall arrest or a safety net. So we in that case, on a scissor lift with a travel restraint or a fall restrict system, we don't have to have a safety plan, a rescue plan, we do have to have a safety plan, but we don't have to have a rescue plan. Is it a good idea? Oh, I think so. But with the system set up correctly, whether it's a scissor lift or a genie boom, you shouldn't come out the edge if it's correctly installed. You should be tagged off down on the floor of the scissor or underneath the controls of the genie or externally on the bucket truck. But the rule is that if that machine is moving, you are harnessed. On a genie boom, you harness all the time as soon as you get on it. Primarily because of the fact that it's basically an all-terrain vehicle with a catapult on the end of it, right? So in a genie boom, we harness, we tie off 100%. In a scissor lift, it's when it's moving or if it's above. But you're right. Those low lifts, if we're just using it as a step stool, theoretically we don't have to tie off. But I say if you got a harness and you got a lanyard and you got an anchor point, use it. Just use it. Yeah. Good question. We've kind of cycled into question and answer period, which is a good thing. Any other questions that you might have? Please, somebody ask me about how does a roofer get tied off when he gets to the job? That's a good question. You don't want to ask that? Everybody wants to know that one, yeah. Safe work plans. The Ministry of Labor is pushing us really hard to have safe work plans. In my safe work plan, my documented toolbox talk, what we want to do, if I was a roofer and I was showing up at this job, these guys are really enjoying this, so I'm just let them stand here because they look great. If I'm a roofer and I arrive at a job site and I've got to get up on that roof, what we have to do as a crew is decide how are we going to maintain tie-off. And if we decide that there's just no way to do it, somebody's going to have to go up there unprotected. But we have to rule out every possibility. What are some of the possibilities? Well, throwing a 3/8 tagline over the roof and pulling my lifeline back over the other way. Tying it off and attaching to it. That's a good one. I always like to say, in the city, where they have all the money, we have drones, and we would fly a tagline over the roof and pull our tagline back. But if I can pull a lifeline, yeah, right. We have lots of money. The margins are just tighter. That's all. If we can get this over the roof somehow and drop down the other side, I've got everything I need to go up the ladder. I've got everything I need to go up the roof. If that's impossible, then what we would do is discuss that amongst us as a work team, document it in our safe work plan that there was no way for us to establish a first anchor point except that we would put up the extension ladder, start the ladder on the bottom, go to the top of the ladder, tie the ladder off, establish an anchor point there, ascend the roof, but we made sure that there was no ice or snow or anything on that. Like, we have to document all that stuff, get to the top of the roof and establish anchor point number 1, attach to it, and then create other anchor points for other workers. But we have to do diligence in that we've ruled out any possibility or any hope of us being able to get this first line over. I've been doing tower work for most of my life, and you know what? Usually we can get a lifeline over, somehow, usually. There have been times when we've had to go up unprotected to a first anchor point, but typically we can get something up there, but usually it's by throwing a light line over and pulling this up and attaching it down off at the ground. If you attach this to your pickup truck, make sure the keys are in your pockets. Yeah. A roofer's anchor, we've got one over here. I brought it. I don't like them much, but a roofer's anchor is an engineered anchor, good for one shot use, and supposed to be fastened with these nails. Can you tell I don't like it much? But I'm a lineman, so I'm a high steel guy. I'm a pole guy. I don't really like this idea, but this is a temporary anchor point rated for 450 pounds, which a roofer can, or any person can, bend and shape to what they need, attach it to the roof one time with the fasteners that come with it, and that's good for travel restraint, 450 pounds. So that is an acceptable anchor point that you or I can install without an engineer's approval.
So it's the fall arrest anchor points that obviously under Worksite.
Yeah. Now, roofers will tell me that one of their best practices is to use this, which is also travel restraint. They'll take that up. Most of the roofers that I know don't like this either. They'll take this up the roof. They'll bash 2 holes through the sheathing on either side of roof truss. So what I've got is roof truss coming down. They'll wrap this down through a couple of times. So this is the roof truss going down here. They'll put a carabiner through that, and then they'll attach that lanyard to this, or a lifeline to this. And that's a much better system than even that temporary travel, or the temporary roof anchor there. Good. Well, I think in 20 minutes or less, I've taught you everything I know, except for taking these things off. I've spent 15 minutes at the back of a bucket truck trying to untangle these stupid harnesses, because they'll get twisted up in a ball. What the Ministry of Labor says is that supervisors are required to make sure that their fall protection equipment is in good order, well maintained, and ready for rescue. So, ready for rescue goes like this, guys. Here's how we're going to take these things off. We're going to undo the leg strap first. On my crew, supervisor that I am, we do them back up in the first notch if you can. Or if you got a seatbelt buckle type like Bruno has here, we'll just do the seatbelt buckle back up. I'll tell you why we do that in a second. Next thing, obviously, I want to get this chest strap off. I'll try not to hit the microphone and shock you all out of slumber there. So, again, we're going to take it off just like we put it on, like your overcoat, trying to keep the tangles out of it while we take it off. Give it a shake, and it should look kind of like that once you get it in your hands. Now, a few presenters ago, we talked about inspecting equipment after I use it. Excellent idea. Here's where I think about, what have I done for the last 2, 6, 8 hours? You know what? I kind of remember getting hung up on a screw up on level 7, and I kind of remember it snagged me. I need to look at my harness for that. Have I done any damage to it while I've been wearing it this time? Because that's a time when I can identify it fresh in my mind, find it, and it may take it out of service right there before I put it in the hanger and let somebody else have to inspect it and miss that damage tomorrow. I've done the leg straps up because on my crew, what often happens is that these things hang in the back bin of the truck, which on a rainy day, doesn't matter what we do, it's not sealed well enough to keep all the water out. So what we end up with, if this leg strap is undone, it's dangling down in the water, which A, can make for a very uncomfortable day, but B, can actually damage the harness if it's salt and it gets waterlogged or wet that way. So we'll hang it up that way. The other way to store a harness is this way, to fold it forward, lay it in your gear bag. Usually the only thing I like to put on top of my harness are my work gloves and my hard hat, my safety glasses. This needs to be real close to the top of the bag so that if I'm on a job site and this has got to go into a rescue, remember what I said, I don't know if I said that a 185-pound worker falls 20 feet in 1.12 seconds. 1,000, boom. Not enough time to update your Facebook status. Not enough time to check your email. 1,000, boom, and hits. If they hit a surface, they hit a surface 20 feet below at 3,750 pounds. So this needs to be a rescue harness, needs to be ready to go in my bag or hanging up in the back of the truck. So I go, I grab it, I put it on, and I'm moving towards the rescue as per my rescue plan. So harnesses, lanyards, lifelines, snap hooks. The only thing I didn't talk to you about was carabiners. Here's a construction carabiner. I'm never to put more than one hook on any D-ring on my harness. If I had to make a double leg, say I didn't have a double leg, then I'd need I can attach two to this, but I can't attach two to this. If I need to extend a lanyard, let's say I need to put this one and this one together to make a 12-foot travel restraint, I'd hook them together with this as opposed to putting the two hooks together. The hooks aren't designed for side load of any way. This carabiner is designed so that when it comes under shock, it straightens itself out. Construction carabiners made out of a brass alloy, all good for 5,000 pound strength, and they're operatable with one hand. The mountain climbing carabiners, a number of different operating options. Some of them are screw back, some of them are pull back, some of them are just like that. Construction carabiners always twist and pull back. And one-hand operation for that purpose. So, so that's that, and that's a carabiner. We got all our stuff up here. You can come and mess around with it probably at lunchtime if you want to. Yeah. Well, thanks. Give these guys a hand, man. They're great. Good job. Good job. I'll just lay them right there. Just drop them right there. Yeah. Questions? I think I got about 5 minutes. Or like everybody else, no questions, and that's great.
Is the working at height certification good from Ontario and other provinces?
Good from Ontario in other provinces. We know it doesn't work in reverse. Other provinces are not good in Ontario. I'm hoping, but I can't tell you if it's good to take I think you're going to have to check with a health and safety rep in Alberta to take your Ontario one. What I do know is that the Ontario standard is at the top. They've got more stuff in their working at heights training and that program than any other province. So I'm hoping that other provinces will recognize Ontario. Ontario won't recognize other provinces. Two real quick stories then, if you got no questions. Number one, what I never tell people is what I'm supposed to tell them at the very beginning, is that it's take everything out of your pockets, especially this little instrument that we like to carry in our pockets here. When I'm in a fall, typically, how do you carry your cell phone in your front pocket? Usually, you don't want that screen to break. You carry the screen inside, right? So if you can imagine, right, you can almost picture that harness back on me, right? So if I'm in a fall, what happens is 3,750 pounds or so of force right there. What I've got now is I've got two hardened glass razor blades right up against my femoral artery, which if cut, I can go unconscious in about 7 or 8 seconds, the paramedic in my class said a couple weeks ago. 7 or 8 seconds, it's really fast. So get that thing out, and everything out of your pockets. I had a guy in my class a few weeks ago who said he didn't speak all day. He was one of those guys in the class, you kind of, I hope he's getting this. He didn't speak all day. At the end of the day, he said 2 words. Profound. Those of us who don't talk a lot, profound. 2 words. Wood screws. He didn't say anything else. Wood screws. That's all he said. Yes, wood screws. Get those out of your pockets. As I close, have you ever been in a fall? Have you ever fallen? 65% of the falls that take place are same surface falls. Only 35% happen from a height. 65% of the lost time injury falls are same surface falls. Have you ever fallen? Stick your hand. Yeah. There's two that I can remember, and then I'm going to sit down. Two that I can remember. One was, as a learner lineman, I lost a handhold and a foothold on a wet tower. There was no ladder on that tower. We were climbing the framework. I lost a handhold and a foothold. I ended up with one handhold and trying to get the other foot. I've got the tendonitis, I think, to prove that now, because the stress that it put on that one hand was phenomenal. And I didn't fall. I just lost my balance. So it was only my weight. There was no inertia, no travel speed. So it really, really hard to hang on just with your own weight. That wasn't the worst fall I've ever had. The worst fall I've ever had, I like to call the Country Inn and Suites fall. I was at the Billy Graham Center taking an ethics course, and I was in a hurry to get my stuff out of the room and get up to the conference center. I was in Asheville, North Carolina, and they had this little berm coming out around the sidewalk, and they get a lot of rain up in the mountains there, and it was just to keep the rain from traveling in the front door. I didn't see it, and I'm hoofing it. I'm in a hurry, and so my toe caught that little berm, and I'm going down. And if you've ever fallen like that, you know if you're in a hurry, everything goes into slow motion, right? Everything. So as I'm going down, I looked over here into the room where they were having continental breakfast. And I saw some lady with a stack of too many pancakes, and she carved her way down through and why all this stuff is still in my brain, I don't know, but it's like intimate detail. She had her fork stuffed through there, and she was just about to take the big bite, and the syrup's dripping off of it. And I'm looking over this way as I'm coming down, and she goes from this to she stops, and she starts smiling. The big 747's going down. Well, I took my gaze off of her, and like everything's in slow motion, I took my gaze off of her, and I looked at what I was going to hit: the big glass doors that aren't opening. I'm going too fast. They're not opening. And so in my brain, all of this taking place in about 1.2 seconds, I said, Sully, you're going to have to set the big 747 down in the Hudson right here. And so I made that decision in a split second, and down I went. And I'll tell you, I can still feel that fall. I had my pocket knife in my right side. It dug a new rain gutter in their sidewalk and also dug a rain gutter in my right hip. But that's the worst fall I've ever had. And I've been climbing for 30-some years. So what am I saying? Slip and trip hazards. The ministry says we are to take the time on our work sites to make sure we've assessed and attempted to eliminate all the fall hazards we possibly can. So do that, and don't be setting the 747 down at the Country Inn and Suites if you don't have to. Okay. Thanks very much, guys. Appreciate it.